Welcome into the High School OT studios here in Raleigh. Evan Moesta here with you on the High School OT postgame show. Every second round high school football game in the state of North Carolina has gone final, and High School OT has all of the scores and results for you. It has been a wild night of football here in round number 2 of the NCHSA playoffs. And again, our High School OT postgame show all season long and our statewide high school scoreboard has been brought to you by our partners at Talk It Out NC. Like all of the big games that we're going to go through tonight, it takes a lot of teamwork to stop underage drinking. Start those conversations and get the resources that you need to start the conversation to stop underage drinking when you visit talkitoutnc.org. Again, that's talkitoutnc.org. That is how you can stop underage drinking. Let's get right into some scores from the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. And we're going to start right in 8A. That's where there was a lot of chaos tonight. Huff did not have that chaos, however, in the 8A West. They handle Palisades 56-0. Huff got all over Palisades, 35 points in the first quarter for the Huskies, picking up that win. West Forsyth, they go on the road down to Mallard Creek, and they pick up a 22-10 win. That's a huge win there for Coach Kevin Wallace and the Titans. Our Logan Carter was down there. He'll join us on the postgame show and help break that one down. A couple of shutouts here. The 3-seed Myers Park defeating Chambers 42-0, and West Charlotte defeating Providence 41-0. The Mustangs and the Lions will tangle next week in a really big third-round matchup. Down at the coast, Hoggard shuts out Willow Spring 48-0. How about this one, the 4-versus-5 matchup? Rollsville goes on the road and picks up a one-touchdown victory in overtime to defeat Apex Friendship tonight. Rollsville will go to top-seeded Hoggard. Jordan, 28-24 over Leesville Road. Leesville Road takes a lead with 1:13 to go in the game. They're up 24-21. Jordan gets the ball back for a game-winning drive. Landon Melton, the quarterback at Jordan, fumbles the football, but it goes into the hands of a Jordan player who picks up the fumble and takes it the rest of the way to allow the Falcons to defeat the Pride 28-24. Jordan will head from the Bull City to Raleigh next week to face Millbrook, who defeated Panther Creek handily tonight. The Wildcat defense stepped up without Quentin Cipher and shut out the Catamounts 65-0. Now let's head over to the 7A West. Grimsley, Faison Brandon's return to the Worley lineup results in a 42-0 victory. Jack Britt will be Grimsley's first third-round opponent as they hold on and defeat Davie County tonight, 22-20. Reagan defeats A.L. Brown 42-7. Mooresville goes on the road to Butler and gets the upset victory 38-14. Independence defeats Page 45-6. Lake Norman defeating East Forsyth 28-14, and Weddington defeating Marvin Ridge 63-0 in that one. More scores for you. Richmond, it's not on there, but Richmond, a thriller with Porter Ridge. Richmond wins that one 48-43. Let's move on now to the 7A East. In the 7A East bracket, it's Cardinal Gibbons 52, Fuquay Varina at 8, Hillside defeating Ashley 33-0. More scores from the 7A East, Cape Fear all over Sanderson 47-7. Garner defeating Wake Forest tonight 37-24. Clayton defeating New Hanover 29-0. D.H. Conley picks up a home win over Southern Durham 44-32. Southeast Raleigh defeats New Bern 62-28. And Cleveland, a big win over South Garner tonight 55-3. Now let's head out to the 6A West. More scores presented by Talk It Out NC. Watauga, a big win over St. Stephen's. That was close in the regular season, but the Pioneers did not leave any doubt tonight. Charlotte Catholic, they get a shutout of AC Reynolds 27-0. Sun Valley defeats Olympic 42-6. Freedom shutting out Central Cabarrus 40-0. More scores from the 6A West. On the opposite side of that region, Ashbrook holds on and beats Statesville 22-14. Dudley goes on the road and gets a 21-6 win over Ashboro. Kings Mountain 21, T.C. Robertson 20, a big win there for the Mountaineers. Northern Guilford defeats Asheville 46-13. In the eastern region of the 6A classification, Jacksonville defeats Harnett Central Scotland, how about this one 49-40 over Terry Sanford. A big game for Scotland's backfield and some of its really young rushing talent in that one. Williams getting a 49-12 win over Franklinton. Union Pines defeating Lee County 35-0. That's the second time those teams faced off this season. Middle Creek, they held off West Brunswick. It was West Brunswick with an early lead in that one, but Middle Creek storms back with a vengeance in the second half and wins 52-20. Southern Alamance defeats J.H. Rose 55-36. 71st defeats South Johnston 22-3, and Northern Nash defeats White Oak 48-18. Let's head out now to the 5A West. That's where South Point defeats Irwin 48-13. Monroe defeating West Rowan 49-14. East Lincoln over West Henderson 56-6. Crest defeating Concord 69-6. Hickory 45-6 over Montgomery Central. Franklin holds on the road to defeat Forest Hills tonight 14-13. Oak Grove a 36-7 win on the road at Northwest Cabarrus. Jam Robinson shutting out North Davidson 42-0. From the 5A West, we bring you scores now from the East. Hunt, the top seed in the 5A East, has to hold on in the second round. The Warriors defeat Eastern Alamance tonight 30-28, and Southern Nash defeating Southeast Alamance 58-39. Havelock, a road win up in Barco. They win 35-14 over Currituck. Croatan is off to the third round of the playoffs. How about that? 49-13, a win over Seaforth tonight. Northside from Jacksonville defeats Person 41-20. St. Paul's over West Carteret 46-32. Rocky Mount over South Granville 28-6. And Northeast Guilford over Dixon 49-22. Those are your scores from the 8A, 7A, 6A, and 5A classification here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Before we start bringing in some of our guests who are around the state catching some of these games, I welcome in High School OT's Joel Bryant now to the show. Joel, what a night it's been. There's been some blowout scores.
Yeah, I'll tell you, everyone's reaction to last week was all the blowouts when back-to-back close games last week. Tonight, lots of blowouts. Not too many close games tonight. It definitely has to do with all of the top teams coming back into the fold. All those teams were on buys last week, and now they're here playing everybody this week. And we saw some big margins tonight. So that's going to be a big point of talking later on here as we cover everything.
What has stuck out to you the most watching games tonight?
Well, it really is those blowouts. I mean, there's only a few games that were close. The Richmond Porter Ridge game is close. The Kings Mountain game was close. But really, you could kind of count those games on one hand. There's so many blowouts. Lots of impressive performances, I will say, by teams that, weren't playing last week. And, coaches get kind of concerned with high school kids. How are they going to come out after a week off? It's hard to keep them focused for 2 weeks when there's not a game involved. But a lot of these teams, they kind of, pass the test in terms of, coming out fast and acting like there wasn't any kind of layoff there.
All right, let's start going around the state. I had gone through the 8A through the 4A scores. Let's jump into the 4A West real quick, Joel. Some of those scores. Top-seeded Brevard, a 41-14 win over West Stokes tonight. Burns defeating West Stanley 49-7. Mount Pleasant picks up a thrilling win over Tuscola 44-34 in that one. Pisgah 41-26 over West Iredell. Newton Conover 24-14 against Ford. Maiden, a big win over North Surrey 49-21. Stuart Kramer defeats Bandy 60-49, and High Brighton defeating RS Central 43-19. I mentioned top-seeded Brevard. We bring in Paul Whitnow to the High School OT post-game show. Welcome in, Paul. You had that Brevard game tonight. The Blue Devils continue to roll. They have been undefeated so far this season. And it looks like they took a lot of confidence from the run that they made last year to the regional final, and it has really boded well for them so far in this 4A West bracket.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks for having me, first of all. It's they're rolling. They've won 21 out of their last 22 games now. Only lost to Monroe, eventual state champion last year in the regional final. So, yeah, they've got a lot of confidence. This senior class tonight was their 37th win in 4 years, and the bye week last week. I know you mentioned earlier some coaches might cringe a little bit, but it came at a great time because their regular season bye was week 2, so They had gone 9 games in a row, and they needed to get some guys healthy, and they came out tonight, and I thought it was the best they looked all year, and Coach Coleman said that after the game. It was the best half of football they played all year.
You mentioned that bye helped them a lot. Do you think it also helped, given that kind of battle they had in the final week with Pisgah, where they go to multiple overtimes there and end up surviving in overtime? Do you think that helps them to kind of really kind of reset, learn from the adversity of having to battle through that game and win, and then you get the bye to prepare for this playoff run?
Yeah, you can't you can't overstate that. I would say too. 2 games earlier, they lost their starting quarterback, team captain, and starting safety Ben Kessinger. So they had the quarterback tandem. So they lost him, and then their starting running back Braylon Thompson. I think he played a total of about 4 plays in 2 games. He only played 2 plays in the Pisgah game. He was, I think, 2 carries for 25 yards and a touchdown, and his hamstring was done. So yeah, the bye week, that Pisgah fist fight for sure was brutal for them. That they had several big moments down the stretch, including coming back from trailing West, Henderson, and some of the others. So yeah, good time for the bye week. Most teams might get a little stagnant, but this team looks really fresh right now.
Next week they have Burns. What's going to be important for them to be able to come away with that one in the third round? Obviously, Burns is a team that, when you look on paper at least, numbers-wise and statistically, Burns matches up pretty well with this Brevard team.
Yeah, I think this Brevard defense is really solid up front. They've not been tested a lot in the back. They've not been tested by a lot of passing teams. This conference that they moved back to this year, mostly a running conference, a lot of stud running backs. Even some big plotter running backs, not necessarily breakaway speed type guys. So, but they've handled that well. They've done their business. So, I think their biggest test is going to be at some point a team that likes to air it out and throw over the top, especially with Kessinger out for the year back at safety. But yeah, I think this would be a really solid matchup for them next week with Burns, and it just depends on. Depth is a big key for this Brevard team right now. They're pretty thin, but the guys they have, I think they're capable of going pretty far, but they just can't afford to lose a lot more bodies.
Well, that is Paul Witt from the Transylvania Times. We thank you for joining us tonight. He took
Yeah.
in Brevard's 41-14 win over West Stoke. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
We move on here on the High School OT post-game show, and we're going to welcome in JC Zemble, who was at Lake Norman tonight. A big win for the Wildcats. They win 28-14 in the 7A West bracket. That was over East Forsyth, and a East Forsyth team that year in and year out is very talented. But JC, you were there to take in Lake Norman sophomore quarterback Caden Kraft, who's one of the top players in the country at his position and in his class. A big win, though, for Lake Norman, and how were they able to hold on in that close one against East Forsyth?
They really used a ball control, run-oriented offense, which really made the game go quick. The first quarter was 17 minutes, which for any of us who've been to high school games, that's like in record time.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so it was, Kraft obviously is the one quarterback in the class of 2028 in the state who has a lot of offers. NC State, UNC. He's visited a ton of schools unofficially. Great size, ran well tonight, but they were very judicious when they wanted him to pass. Showed nice touch when he passed, but without keeping stats, I'd be surprised if he threw the ball more than 15 times. They just didn't need him to air it out tonight. And really the only real drama in the game was kind of self-inflicted, where Lake Norman was facing a fourth down on defense, and their sideline ended up having back-to-back 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalties on the coaching staff, which then gave East Forsyth a first down, which then led to a touchdown, which at the time the game was competitive. Other than that, there wasn't a big challenge. The Lake Norman defense just really did a nice job of shutting down East Forsyth offense. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on both teams, but East Forsyth was a lot more explosive on offense when they played Reagan a couple weeks ago when I watched that game. Jair Richburg, who's going to NC State at wide receiver, he didn't have a lot of touches tonight. Probably ended up with maybe 2 or 3 catches. One of them was the pop pass that they like to do with him. So Lake Norman did a really nice job of bottling him up. There's a unique name on the Lake Norman defense in the class of 2027 named Memphis Barb. I may not be pronouncing it correctly, but it's like Memphis, but it's like YS at the end. And he's all over the field. He's one of those defensive players who just gets after it. I don't think he has any Division I scholarships yet, but I think that will change once schools realize what he brings to the table.
This Lake Norman team in Caden Craft, they're heading to Weddington next round in the playoffs. Obviously, you follow a lot of the top recruits across the state of North Carolina, and many of them reside in that front 7 for Weddington. Is this a Lake Norman team that matches up well against Weddington, or how do you forecast that potential matchup going?
I joked with Caden after the interview was over, and I was like, well, if you're going to play Weddington next week, and at the time I didn't know if Weddington had won or lost, I said, you're gonna hear about the Harris twins a lot. And just joking. So when I watched Weddington play, it was against Shelby Crest, and Katie Cotton wasn't with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't followed too closely to know how much of an impact Katie's had, but if he's playing anything like he did at West Charlotte, that was the one piece that Weddington needed. They didn't have that kind of receiver / defensive back, when they were playing Crest, and they dominated Crest. They controlled that game earlier in the season. Weddington's defense basically allowed a touchdown with maybe 60, 70 seconds left in the game, and that was it. So I was very impressed with Weddington. I remember thinking at the time, man, how did Myers Park beat Weddington, right? So, because I think that was the game that had just happened. But of the teams I've watched this year, I think Weddington is one of the best ones.
Well, that is JC Zemble. He was out tonight to watch Lake Norman pick up their big playoff win over East Forsyth. Thanks for joining us tonight, JC.
Thank you.
Before we let you go,
Yeah.
Where can we see your work, and what are you up to, heading forward?
Well, for the fans out there that want really good recruiting coverage, the wolfpacker.com, which is part of the On3 network, Rivals Network, we'll have a lot of the different things that my coworker Noah Fleischman and I do. Recruiting stuff, obviously involving NC State. All the team coverage of NC State basketball and football. Obviously, high school basketball is about to get going. Really nice event next week at West Mecklenburg that Steve Smith is putting on, by the way, for hoops, even though he's a NFL legend. But yeah, and socials at JC Zemble. Typically we'll have all the things on Twitter that will point to all the different areas that I make an impact in.
Well, JC is one of the busiest guys in the state of North Carolina. We thank you for taking the time tonight to join us here on the Postgame Show.
Thank you.
Let's now bring in David Jones and Jeff Link. We are 0 for our last 2 on them being able to hear us on the HighSchoolOT Postgame Show. Can you hear me today?
Yeah,
we did it.
Actually can't hear you. We're going on the laptop
it.
tonight. So yes, it's a score. Yes. Yes.
Where were you guys and how did it go?
So we were in High Brighton and Lower Creek here for a second round matchup, a conference rematch between High Brighton and RS Central. Basically, it went the same way as the first meeting did, only the path to get there wasn't the same. In week 9, RS Central came out really hot, had a 20-14 lead at the end of the first quarter. High Brighton outscored them 31-6 the rest of the way. Early in this game, RS Central threw a lateral pass that was ruled a fumble. High Brighton recovered. First play on offense, DK Mitchell goes 31 yards for the touchdown. He led all the state of North Carolina in rushing touchdowns at 4A with 20. He had 3 more tonight, 118 yards on 20 carries. Balanced attack. Quarterback Lipford threw for 1, ran for 1. Final score, 43-19. High Brighton dispatched RL. With the graduation of Brandon Pinkerton at East Rutherford, who fell to I'd like to see this RS Central team next year. They had a really good quarterback, sophomore Rylan Holly, that got hurt in week 7. Their leading running back, Jaquez Smith, got hurt in week 7. Hezekiah Joyner and CJ Sparks. All 4 of those players are sophomores. They'll all be back for RS Central. Got a great coach in Jim Ryan. I would circle RS Central as a contender next year in the Western Piedmont 3A, 4A, right along with this High-Brighton team.
Yeah, big win there. There are a lot of games out in the Catawba Valley that were intriguing that we talked about last week leading into tonight's schedule. There weren't as many close back-and-forth scores, though, as we may have expected. We were talking a little bit about how St. Stephen's was competitive with Watauga in the regular season. That one was a blowout tonight. Shelby gets the big win, as you mentioned, over East Rutherford, 65-34 in that one. As you guys kind of digest some of the scores that have come in across your region, what has stood out to you so far?
What stood out to me is we're going to have some great matchups in round 3. As bad as week 1 was and as the scores in week 2, I know there was a lot of complaints with the way that the playoffs. You're going to get the week before Thanksgiving. You're going to get some heavyweight battles. I'm looking forward to Charlotte Catholic going up to Watauga next week, and at least here in our area, we're about 45 minutes down the mountain from Boone. Supposed to be in the 60s during the day and probably in the 50s. So you take about 10 degrees off going up to Boone. I'm sure the folks in Boone would love for it to be sleeting, snowing, doing everything for Charlotte Catholic to come up. That's going to be a tremendous matchup. You've got East Lincoln and Crest. That's going to be a great matchup. That one's in the 5A. Freedom's going to welcome Sun Valley. Freedom getting that into the 3rd round. It's been a long time since the Freedom Patriots been to the 3rd round, but Sun Valley will come in. That should be a great matchup. Franklin's going to have to come down the mountain to Hickory and play next week. Really looking forward to part 2 of Newton Conover and Maiden. Those 2 teams played on Halloween night. Newton Conover kind of came out of nowhere this year, had a great season, and they're in the 3rd round. They'll host Maiden next week. So I'm looking forward to that Newton Conover Maiden matchup. Of course, we'll have High-Brighton and Stuart Kramer here. We're frantically trying to find some information about Stuart Kramer, a new school, no really history for many teams in our area with them. So it's going to be interesting to see that matchup. Lincolnton's going to travel up to Mountain Heritage next week. That should be a great one. But the one that if I wasn't doing a game next week where I would be, Mount Airy, because you're going to have Shelby going to Mount Airy next week. That's going to be a heck of a football game in the 3rd round. We were talking about how many state championships between those 2 programs for the right to go on to the 4th round. That's going to be a fun game. So as bad as the scores were 1st and 2nd round, it's really set up nicely. Chalk has held for the most part. You're going to have some great matchups in the 3rd round next week.
I'm going to bring in Joel Bryant now to the post-game show. We were talking about that Kramer High-Brighton game that's coming up. Joel, there's a lot of kids at Kramer who are potentially some top recruits, and this is going to be an intriguing matchup.
Yeah, they have this tight end who's a junior, Quelto Hawkins. He's either junior or sophomore. We should have had JC answer this, but he's a big tight end who's a power four recruit. But I tell you that new coach down there, Ashton Simmons, he's from kind of the northwest corner of the state. He had coached at Star Mountain and Mount Airy. He's down there in year 1. He's completely turned that program around. He's a young guy. He's probably mid-30s still. What he's done with that Stuart Kramer team just in his first year there, when frankly they've kind of just been like this almost little brothers of South Point, all of them in Gaston County. Really good sign for them in the first year. So they've already, kind of passed their expectations, I would say. So they're kind of playing with house money, which makes them kind of scary.
How do you think, Joel, they match up against
only
this
2 losses were to Burns and Selby.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure how the matchup will go. I haven't seen either of those teams with my own eyes this year, so I don't want to say anything wrong. But it's going to come down to just whether or not they can contain Lipford or not. Not many teams have been able to contain him since he came back from Independence to that county. That's what's going to be, to me, that's what's going to go down to, because obviously they had to do well against Sweat tonight from Bandy's, at least well enough to hold them to under 50, which they were able to do. So if they can contain him next week, different style player, they'll probably be in a good shape.
You got any questions for?
I think ball control will be big this week. You had High-Brighton tonight. They had 1 drive in the 2nd quarter, took 9 minutes off the clock, ended in a field goal. High-Brighton's got a really good field goal kicker. That's going to be huge. I also think just with Litford able to mix in enough of the pass, you've got DK Mitchell, that's a bruising back, but with Mitchell being able to mix in enough of the pass that Stuart Kramer will have to stay honest on defense. But if Brighton, if their game plan is to control the clock and win the time of possession, I like Brighton's chances. But if Stuart Kramer can get turnovers, that's been a knock on this Brighton program throughout history. It's in big games they've put. And so if that happens next week and Stuart Kramer can get off turnovers, they could come up here and pull it easily. But if Brighton controls the line of scrimmage they have in most of their games this season, they should be okay.
I'll also add this. 2 of Brighton's starting wide receivers are former quarterbacks in Avon Crawford and Grady Beam. Crawford had some nice catches tonight. Beam had a touchdown pass. Just really heady, smart players. And there's just something intangible about having those former quarterbacks out there on the edge. The clock is in their head. They know when to break things off. They know how to help their quarterback the best. And so Brighton's got to clean up some penalties, but it should be a heck of a ball game next Friday night. That's what we'll have right here at Jeff Story Memorial Stadium.
What can we expect from you guys on the show?
Foolery.
Terrible.
Foolery. You can expect me saying bad things about Dabo Sweeney.
Hater.
Yeah, you can expect me saying great things about Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin.
Is that official?
You can expect us. Well, not official yet. Every Hokie's hoping that it's official.
There's black smoke coming out of every chimney in Blacksburg right now. We'll have highlights of this game. We'll have all the scores. And we'll get some more details for our folks here on the Freedom, the Watauga, the Hickory wins. We'll have all that for our folks. And we'll full look ahead. Can App State play spoiler to James Madison? LR finishing up against Catawba. And, of course, we'll have Panthers, Falcons looking ahead too.
Well, as always, we appreciate you guys. That's David Jones and Jeff Link from Scoreboard Radio. Tonight they had High Brighton's win over RS Central. We're going to take a quick break here on the High School OT post-game show. When we come back, we'll bring in Tim Howard. J. Mike Blake will join us as well. But first, here's a message from our friends at Talk It Out NC.
Don't fall for the myths. Get the facts about underage drinking.
Myth. Teens bounce back fast, and teenage athletes can perform just fine after a night of drinking alcohol. The fact is, alcohol can hinder athletic performance for up to 3 days, delaying recovery and causing long-term issues with muscle loss and weakness. But don't just take it from me.
Choosing not to drink as an underage athlete has really helped me significantly. I've been able to focus, keep my priorities straight, and it's helped me separate myself from, many other people.
Get more facts at talkitoutnc.org.
Welcome back to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Evan Moesta here with you. Let's go through some scores from the 4A Eastern region. Reedsville, a 44-0 win tonight over Red Springs. Eastern Wayne goes on the road to Southwestern Randolph and wins 49-0 in that one. North Pitt defeats Randleman on the road 28-23. Central Davidson picks up a 49-8 win over Carver. East Duplin defeats North Johnston 48-20. Southwest Edgecombe goes on the road to Bunn and wins 29-24. TW Andrews picks up a 36-17 win over Clinton. The Andrews now in the third round. That's a big turnaround for that program. West Craven 49, 6 winners over Roanoke Rapids. Now let's head over to the 3A West. Again, every final score from every second round playoff game can be found on highschoolot.com right now, all presented by our friends at Talk It Out NC. In the 3A West, Mountain Heritage picks up a big win over West Lincoln. Lincoln 10 holds on and defeats Hendersonville 28-27. West Davidson goes on the road and beats Providence Grove 31-21. North Stanley in a thriller with East Surrey 49-45. The final there. Eastern Randolph protects its home field against Union Academy 43-7 there. Walkertown a 67-0 win over Wheatmore. Shelby a big road win, as we talked to the guys at Scoreboard Radio about, 65-34 there. They will head to Mount Airy, who defeated Thomasville tonight 52-0 in the 3A East bracket. It is top-seeded James Keenan. In its rematch with Wallace Rose Hill, they hang on, persevere, and win 26-7. They will take on Aiden Grifton, who goes on the road to Wattville tonight and wins 27-26. Martin County holds on for a win over Wake Prep, 28-20 in that one. Wake Prep had an early lead, but the Gators hold on there. Farmville Central, a massive road win at Lewisburg, 58-27. A big win there for the Jaguars. Kinston, a road win at Midway, 34-13. Pasquotank picks up a 54-41 win over Princeton. Lots of high-scoring ones here in the 3A East. South Columbus falls to Northeastern 56-21. Pender shuts out Hertford County 60-0. Off to the 2A West, Murphy defeating Albemarle 57-14. Community School of Davidson a win at Swain County. They'll make the long drive back to Davidson, victorious 65-13. Corvian Community a 45-7 victory over North Rowan, and East Wilkes defeats Hayesville 44-7. How about this as an upset? I'm going to bring in Joel Bryant once we're done with these scores here. Mountain Island Charter 7-6 over Allegheny. A huge win there. Bishop McGinnis 42-12 over Mitchell. South Stanley 38-0 against Christ the King. And Starmount defeats Cherryville 56-7. Last set of scores here in the NCHSAA. And that is the 1A bracket where Robbinsville defeats Andrews 56-7. East Columbus defeats North Stokes 32-21. Thomas Jefferson shuts out Winston-Salem Prep 43-0. And South Davidson defeats Rosman 27-8. Out in the East, Kip Pride defeats Howard 48-7. How's this for a final score? Wilson Prep goes back and forth in a battle with Southeast Halifax. The Tigers at one point in the second half were trailing, but they pull out the win in 104 combined points. 64-40. A huge win for Wilson Prep. Beargrass Charter 48-14 over North Edgecombe. North Edgecombe had that big upset last Friday night. And then Northside Pinetown, the 48-7 win over Hobgood Charter. I'm going to bring Joel Bryant back into the show now. Joel, talking about that Mountain Island Charter and Allegheny score that we saw in the 2A bracket, is that one of the more surprising results from tonight's action?
Yeah, Allegheny's a team that was playing really well all year. They really challenged Starmount in that game earlier in the season. It was a 1-point final in overtime. And for Starmount, they're beating Cherryville tonight at 56-7. But I do think outside of Starmount, that Mountain Valley 2A, 3A, 4A conference has not played very well in the playoffs. They've lost a lot of games. And Mountain Island Charter, they're in that funky Yadkin Valley 1A, 2A, 3A conference where it's one of those football-only conferences. And that conference is doing pretty well. I mean, they go up and beat Allegheny. North Stanley with a big win over another team kind of from that area. East Surrey tonight, that was kind of a basketball score, 49-45 tonight. South Stanley tonight, they're winners as well. So that football-only conference doing pretty well for such a new league and kind of different matchups. It's interesting to see how well they're doing collectively.
Anything else stand out to you before I bring Tim Hauer on?
I'm excited to hear from Tim. There's a lot of stuff going on in Wilmington.
Yeah, let's bring in Tim here to the High School OT postgame show. Tim, you were monitoring a lot of scores that were happening across the coastal region of North Carolina. It included a big win from Hoggard, a big win from Pender. West Brunswick seemed competitive as well in its game with Middle Creek. How did your games go down at the coast?
Yeah, like you said, Hoggard and Pender obviously putting on quite impressive performances in the first half. Hoggard was up 48-0 at halftime, scored on all 7 drives, and Willow Springs had -9 yards at halftime, no first downs. So I think they finished with 3 total yards for the entire game. So that Hoggard defense, really impressive. And then the offense obviously doing their thing, didn't even have to play any of their starters in the second half. So I think that's exactly what you want if you're Hoggard, right? You're coming off that bye, get in, get your business taken care of early, get those guys out so that they're all fresh for next week against Rollsville, which is going to be obviously a more difficult challenge. Same thing with Pender, had the bye, came out, did what they do all year long, which is run the football down your throat. And again, they're going to have a tough test with Northeastern. I know, Northeastern is always a team that seem to always spoil some of our team's seasons down here, Wallace Rose Hill, teams like that. So I obviously have seen a lot of their success in the playoffs the last couple of years. So, but yeah, other than that, a tough night for the rest of the Carolina Coast Conference. Ashley, they thought they had a chance to maybe pull off some more magic after beating Cary last week, but they struggled to get anything going against Hillside, and same thing with New Hanover. They really struggled against Clayton. And neither one of those teams scored. West Brunswick, like you said, they were up 14-7 at halftime at Middle Creek, and they were looking strong, playing really good defense, and unfortunately, a really bad third quarter kind of hurt them. They gave up a bunch of points, had some turnovers, and just kind of couldn't claw their way back into it. But what a turnaround season for West Brunswick. I think they won 3 games last year, had 7 this year. So Shane Handy doing a good job of kind of turning that program around.
Let's talk a little bit more about that Hoggard-Rolesville game that's coming up next week. Rolesville has to survive in overtime tonight on the road at Apex Friendship. They win 14-7 in that one. This is an intriguing game because you look at the talent that Rolesville has on paper, and you can make the argument that Rolesville might have more talent than this Hoggard team, but it feels like in terms of team football, there may not be better than Hoggard in the 8A East in terms of size, physicality, discipline, coaching. It's going to be an interesting clash there because that Rolesville team, when they're at the peak of their powers, seems pretty unstoppable, but this Hoggard team is just a well-oiled machine. What's going to be some of the keys for Hoggard in this one?
Yeah, like you said, the thing at Hoggard is, you look at like the recruiting rankings and stuff like that. I mean, they're not gonna jump out at you with 4 or 5 star athletes. But what they do is they know what their role is on the team, and that's pretty obvious. The coaching staff, I think, does a really good job of letting these kids know, like, this is what we need you to do. Go do this. XYZ, be really good at it, and don't do anything else. We don't need you to be something that you're not. And I think that's what makes Hoggard so good is that those kids understand what they need to do to be successful. And, defensively, they're always going to be in these games. The amount of athletes somebody else has, I don't think really scares them because they're so fundamentally sound that they stay in their gaps. They can tackle. They've got a really good back end, so they don't feel like they have to maybe double team somebody or sit back. They'll bring some pressure, and so yeah, I mean, I think if Hoggard just goes out there and plays the way they can, it's going to take somebody's really best effort to beat them, just because they're not going to beat themselves. They have had some turnover issues a little bit this year, but didn't have that tonight, obviously. If Hoggard plays clean football, if it's Rolesville, if it's Millbrook, whoever it is, they're going to have to play really well to beat Hoggard.
And it feels like this is where Hoggard's preparation early in the season, playing Richmond, going to Jack Britt, playing Clayton, this is where it's going to pay dividends over the next week or two when you're facing some of these top teams. It's interesting because transitive property means nothing, especially from early in the season to now on November 14th. But it's, Hoggard had a close game with Richmond to open the year, 28-21, I believe that score was. But then Rolesville found a ton of success against Richmond. So it's very interesting to kind of put those two together. I have Joel Bryant in here now. Joel, what do you expect from this Rolesville-Hoggard game next Friday night?
Well, until tonight, when Rolesville played Apex Friendship, I would have told you that this was trending towards a Rolesville win. I thought Rolesville was playing better than Hoggard, frankly, over the past month. But the Rolesville Apex Friendship game tonight, I mean, needing to go to overtime to beat that team when, I mean, let's be frank, I mean, they're very well coached, but Rolesville's this very strong talent advantage over that Apex Friendship team. So I feel like they've kind of like gone back to square one when they came into this season, where they're kind of shaky, just not playing up to their ability. So yeah, right now I'd say, Hoggard's probably Hoggard's probably gonna be favored for me next week.
Well, certainly intriguing, Tim. I'm sure you'll be at that one next week down at the Shipyard.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. Hoggard having that home field advantage too, I think could be big. The Hoggard fans are real rowdy, especially the deeper they get into the playoffs. So having that game at Scott Broswell Stadium, I think, is big as well.
I have a comparison for you. And this Rolesville team is a lot like that 2017 Heritage team, where they had all those college players, and they just, for whatever reason, they weren't playing up to their ability, and then they go out to Hoggard, and then Hoggard sends them home. So that's a good comparison for you there.
And Hoggard it's really hard to go down to Scott Braswell Stadium and win. Ask a talented Millbrook team last year, ask Cardinal Gibbons the year prior to that. And I remember both of those teams walking away just shaking their head about that place is so hard to play. You got the horns, the fans are all on top of you. It's a rowdy environment against a really good football team. And I think sometimes people might watch Hoggard on tape, and then when you go and you line up across from them, it's a completely different story. So it'll be interesting to see what Rolesville does next Friday night down at Hoggard. Thanks for joining us tonight, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk to you guys next week.
I'm going to bring J. Mike Blake now into the High School OT postgame show. J. Mike has been tracking scores from across the state of North Carolina. J. Mike, you've had a chance to kind of digest every final score across the state. Again, if you want to see every final score, you want to see every live bracket, you can head over to HighSchoolOT.com right now. It's all there, presented by Talk It Out NC. To start the conversation, to stop underage drinking, you can visit talkitoutnc.org. Get all of the resources that you need and all of the tools to talk to either your peers or your child about stopping underage drinking. J. Mike, you've seen all of these scores. What has stood out to you so far?
Well, I think the results tonight are good. If you kind of don't want to see this playoff format get completely upended after 1 year, because what could not happen tonight was all these teams with the first round buys lose to teams that played last week. That did not happen in large numbers. I really quickly, unofficial numbers, I think I saw like 24 teams on the road that won. But not all of those are teams that had a bye versus teams that didn't, because in 1A, for instance, both teams had a bye. And in the ones that did, that did lose at home, a lot of those are 8 seeds losing to 9 seeds, which is
I was going to say that Eastern Wayne score was a blowout, but that was a 9-8 game, and that's a really good Eastern Wayne team.
You're talking about the RPI difference in hosting and playing in the first week was probably less than 1/10 of a decimal, right? So this is a good thing, because what if we had a bunch of road teams winning tonight, then every football coach would be up in arms saying, like, this is not fair to my team. I think one thing that helps is that we have so many teams getting a first round bye. There have been playoff formats in the past where it was a 48 team bracket or something like that, and maybe 4 teams got a bye, kind of like what the 8A bracket is now. That just kind of wasn't enough. And also you did the seeding so much differently that you could be clashing with a really good conference runner-up in the second round. So going back to what Joel said with Heritage, the one that always stands out in my mind is Cardinal Gibbons wins this conference. They play Heritage in the next round. Heritage has 1 loss in the last week of the regular season. They go in and they beat Cardinal Gibbons. But again, like, I think for those who thought that last week had a lot of blowouts, I think you just needed some context from these other sports that we've seen. There were so many blowouts in tennis and volleyball, and honestly, football was one of the more competitive first rounds. It was cool to see these teams get their first home playoff game, first playoff win. Tonight, maybe reality set in a little bit, but it didn't upset the teams that proved they were the best year round, who had the high RPIs. And honestly, like, I think now we've had a nice little warm up to the playoffs. Next week, these matchups look great. I've just been glancing around, looking at some of them.
It's going to be incredible down in Charlotte.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it could be incredible in terms of like what these teams are. And sometimes you just look at the brands, right? What we're expected to see. So in 8A alone, Huff and West Forsyth, Myers Park, West Charlotte, Hoggard and Rolesville, Jordan and Millbrook. Like, sign me up for any of those games, right? I mean, figuratively speaking, I'll be covering soccer state championships next week. But then, 7A, you've got Cape Fear and Garner. That's a really intriguing matchup. Reagan and Mooresville, Independence playing Richmond. Think about the brands of those two programs. Clayton versus Conley, Southeast Raleigh, Cleveland rematch, Lake Norman, Weddington. I can go on through all these brackets, but you can see them in high school OT.
Shelby, Mount Airy, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My gosh. Like, these are really like intriguing matchups across the board. And it's okay, folks. I think it's okay if you have a lot of teams get into the playoffs and structure it this way, because I haven't seen brackets in my 18 years of doing this that were better set up for the best teams. We've had a lot of brackets that were set up for teams from the weaker conferences or teams who just snuck in. This one was set up so that the teams who have proven they're the best during the regular season have a fair bracket when we get to this round. The 1 through 8s, like, it makes sense. You just look at these matchups and you're like, that's the way it's supposed to look. We didn't always have that for 20-something years. So I'm really, really excited for what the rest of the playoffs holds.
I will say, there are some instances, I think, of this Lewisburg team being a 4 seed where with the new RPI formula giving a higher weight to your own win percentage, you get a team like that doesn't schedule the toughest schedule out there. They end up winning by far most of their games this season, end up with a 4 seed because of that. So there's a way for some programs to kind of take advantage of it with the new RPI, but for the most part, yes, I think that the new system does have the best teams kind of in those high seeds. But of course, there are going to be exceptions.
And you got to take care of what's in front of you. Next week, we have NCHSA third round, but we also have NCISA state championships coming up next Friday. Let's look at some of the semifinal scores from tonight. In 8-man, it's Arundel Parrott, a 44-14 win over Faith Christian, and Cary Christian defeating JP2 35-27. It's a big win there for Cary Christian. They beat John Paul II both times that they play him this season. In the Division 1 bracket, you have Providence Day 41-7 over Cannon School, and you have Charlotte Christian defeating Rabun Gap 55-48. That sets up the Battle of Sardis Road for the state championship. That's awesome. They had that a couple of years ago. In Division 2, High Point Christian, they continue to be undefeated as they shut out Harrell's Christian, and the Nashville School defeats Trinity Christian 31-14. So that'll be Asheville School and High Point Christian in the Division 2 bracket. Joel, what do you think about this 8-man in Division 1?
I think this 8-man bracket is actually maybe one of the most fun brackets we have of all the brackets between public school and private school. Those top 3 teams, Cary Christian, JP2, and APA, they're all very close together. I mean, when they were playing each other this year, the games were close. So they're kind of like, they're so far ahead of the rest of the class that I was intrigued to see how it would end up here. But good for Cary Christian to beat JP2 again in another close game. That's going to be an exciting game between Cary Christian and APA. For the 8-man state championship.
APA won the first battle, by the way. That was on October 24th, 52-38. So they won by 2 scores in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Battle of Sardis Road in Division 1.
Yeah, I mean, big props to Charlotte Christian for going in and beating Rabun Gap. That's a very tough thing to do on the road. You travel so far, literally to another state, to play a team from another state that's in the NCISA for some reason. They lost the first game by 2 scores, and they come back, travel there again, and win by a score. And I think they were actually up themselves for 2 scores most of the game. I think Rabun Gap had a little comeback late to make it a 1-score game at the end. A very impressive job by the Chris James of Charlotte Christian. Both Chris James and Snyder winners.
Still alive. Yep, both of them.
Yeah.
And then thoughts from this D2 High Point Christian picking up the victory, and they'll face Asheville School in that Division 2 bracket. High Point Christian has just been a well-oiled machine this year.
That's a program that's just really been on like a steady increase, right? So every year they're kind of increasing their win total, and now this year they're undefeated. They still have Jalen Moore, that running back. I think he rushed for 160 and 3 scores tonight. Keeping him was a big deal. I know there's probably a chance he probably could have gone back to public school somehow, but keeping him on that team has been a big deal for them. And I expect that they're probably going to be a heavy favorite over Asheville School in that state championship, because Asheville School is a little bit down this year compared to what they normally are.
Anything else that we're looking forward to over the next week leading into the third round in the NCHSA?
I'm looking forward to how the 3 of us are going to manage the soccer state championships, the NCISA football state championships, and the NCHSA third round. on Friday.
It's gonna happen somehow.
We will figure it out somehow. Someone will be doing something at all times. But no, so the frankly, when the brackets came out for the public schools, we were really eyeing this third round. Anyways, we kind of knew that some of the matchups in the first 2 rounds weren't going to be great. And yeah, so you're kind of getting some of these similar games to what everybody got used to, from 2001 through 2020, where you had the subdivided playoffs, and there's kind of like these little rivalries that formed because these teams would see each other every year in the playoffs, right? It'd be usually around the same round every year. There's similar kind of a deal every year, similar story every year. So I think we're going to start seeing that. I think we might be looking at like the first chapter of a Mount Airy Shelby saga, right? A new Mount Airy Shelby saga kind of deal. So stuff like that, I think it's going to really start forming. Next week, we're going to see some new rivalries kind of emerge in this new playoff system. So it's going to be very fun.
I'll add that I've counted real quick, 13 double-digit seeds left statewide. There were some questions when you tweak any formula, how well will it work? And, we mentioned that, hey, there are a few teams that I think just with the eye test, maybe you're questioning how good of a seed they got. But by and large, you look at this bracket and you're like, it did its job. It can't be perfect, right? But it did its job. The fact that in all the other sports, in soccer, I thought if there is one sport we're going to have a double-digit seed get to a state title, it might be soccer. They all lost on Tuesday, so that's out of the question there. Football, we're down to 13. So I'm kind of saying, is there a Cinderella run? Because some of these double-digit seeds have great traditions, right? Kings Mountain is a double-digit seed. Dudley is a double-digit seed. I made a prediction, like when all this happened, that there would be no more double-digit seeds making deep runs to state championship games. And this is kind of our last one for the fall to see whether or not that comes to fruition or not. If there is a Cinderella story within these 8 championships.
I think it'll still be common for those programs like that, like Kings Mountain and Shelby, those programs like that, because they're in kind of areas and conferences where they're just more predisposed to play tougher competition.
Yeah.
So and then you have some teams that are just based on where they are, they're not going to really play teams that level. So when you play tougher competition with this new RPI, your RPI is not going to be as high as what you were used to over the past 4 years. So I think we will still see the sparing ones. Like you were saying, it's kind of like these special programs that are playing these tough schedules. So I think we'll still see it a little bit. But frankly, out of how many teams in the playoffs? Like 300 now.
Yeah, something
over 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to only have 13 double-digit seeds left. It speaks for itself.
Like I always say, you can complain as much as you want, but it's always going to work itself out because in the end, we are crowning the 8 best football teams in the state of North Carolina.
Well, here you can complain all you want and actually change stuff. So, I mean,
it's not a bracket to find who has the easiest path. It's the bracket to find who the 8 best teams are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School OT post-game show. The second round games are in the books. Again, head on over to HighSchoolOT.com. You can get all of the live brackets, see who everybody's playing next round, see what tonight's final scores were. They were all presented by our partners at Talk It Out NC, as well as this post-game show presented by Talk It Out NC. For Evan Moesta, Joel Bryant, J. Mike Blake, and the rest of our crew here at High School OT, we wish you a happy weekend.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh. Sometimes you cry, but most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions, like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk It Out NC.